all new and strange and unprecedented. So it's certainly nice to have the comfort of some familiar people.
All right, so before we get started, I do want to go over some rules for this orientation and Q&A. Please use the chat feature only for questions about history class. We will try and answer all of your questions throughout this session. But again, please reserve the chat for questions about history only. Throughout this presentation and the Q&A, please make sure that your mic is muted. And we'll get started with Mr. Miller and your presentation.
Okay. Welcome back to school, everybody. Such as it is, it's going to be a different year again for us, but hopefully it will be a good one. I'm certainly hopeful and optimistic that it would be a good one. I have a couple of quick things to let you know before we start with the presentation of information about the class. One of which is I need to let you know that all of these, what we call synchronous sessions, where we are live, we have live video in these sessions, are recorded and have a classroom monitor. And Ms. Pinkston, Hillary Pinkston, our Dean of Students, is the classroom monitor for today's session. And all of the synchronous classroom sessions and office hours with teachers will be that way. So you just need to be aware. It's just part of my responsibility to let you know, for privacy and security sake, all these sessions are recorded, including the chat menu, the chat column, and everything that you and I do and say will be recorded when we're in these sessions. Secondly, one thing I'd like to ask all of you to do, cameras are optional today, and cameras will be optional even in class sessions. We want to respect everybody's privacy who feels they need to have it respected, and want everybody to feel as safe and secure as they possibly can. However, it's really important to me, at least, to see the faces of the kids and get to know as best as possible all of the kids that are in my classes. So it would really help if you took a picture for your meets sessions, and a somewhat close-up picture that clearly shows your face, and maybe not one that's from when you were, 3 or 4 years old or in first grade or something like that, even though I'm sure you have a number of those lying around, but a fairly recent close-up picture of your face so that I know who you are, that I can get to know who you are better as the quarter goes along. So those are the two things that I'll start with. Now, I am going to present my screen, and I want you to understand also that you can turn on closed captioning if it's necessary for you as soon as we get started here. So I'm going to present my screen.
And Mr. Miller, while you're doing that, you had a question about the pictures. What if you have seen them before?
I'd still like to have a picture. I mean, they're juniors now, and a lot of them, the pictures that last picture I had of them was from 8th grade or 9th grade, maybe. So it would be nice to have, especially boys tend to really change during this age, and so I'd love to be able to see a current picture of their face.
And for those of you that just came in, Mr. Miller did go over that he's presenting this Q&A session. Miss Wilson is presenting a different Q&A session. If you have Miss Wilson, this is exactly where you're supposed to be, as long as you have this class. And so it's the same information, her class or Mr. Wilson's class or Mr. Miller's class. It's the same information we're presenting to every student that has US history. And Mr. Miller, I'll let you present, and when it's a good time and I feel like questions come up, I'll just unmute myself and ask you the questions.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Now that I'm presenting, I would like to check and make sure that each and every one of you can see my screen.
Yes.
Should be seeing the screen that says Social Studies Orientation, and Ms. Pinkston will let me know if that's a negative for anybody.
Looks like everyone can see it so far.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, I've labeled the theme for this year a semester of grace, kindness, and patience. Hey, let's acknowledge it. We're all in uncharted territory. We're all struggling to some level or another, and we will struggle to some level or another. People throughout our school district have experienced it already this week and last week. Issues with technology, just not quite understanding how distance education works, and so on and so forth. So there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be difficulties. There are going to be things that everyone doesn't understand, from me and Ms. Wilson in this class all the way down to every last single student that's there. So we're going to try to be as patient as we possibly can with you, and we would just ask you to do the same for us. And we're going to be as kind as we possibly can to you and look out for you as much as we can. And we would ask that you do the same for us and for one another. That's really what it's going to be like to get through this quarter. Here are all of the teachers in our department. There are 5 of us. We have between 11 and 1,200 students in this school and 5 social studies teachers, which explains why Ms. Wilson and I couldn't both be here today, because she has to give the same sort of presentation for one of the other classes that she teaches, because we all teach multiple classes. Unfortunately, having just 5 teachers in the department also means that there won't be any small social studies classes, I'm afraid. I think I have one of the smaller ones at 32 students. So we're just going to have to practice that grace and kindness and patience with everybody as we go through the quarter. Here are the 2 U.S. history teachers. There's some background information here that I'll stall a little bit here and give you a moment or so to read. Jennifer Wilson and I are the teachers for these U.S. history classes. Your classes are the same period. I want to reiterate what Ms. Pinkstad said. Hillary, I'm sorry, I almost had to apologize there for temporarily forgetting your married name.
That's okay.
Hopefully it won't happen again. Hillary was a student here at Putnam, and I remember her from days when she was going to school with one of my daughters. Anyway, that's an aside. Probably the most important information to remember here are 2 things. One, Ms. Wilson and I meet constantly. We meet at least a couple of times every single week. We're working on the same curriculum. We are using the same teaching strategies. So whichever class you're in, the curriculum is going to be almost identical, whichever one. We both happen to have our U.S. history classes in 4th period, so you'll even be taking the classes next door. It would have been next door, at least, if we'd been in school at the same time. For you all, that means, according to the schedule, that it's going to be at, if I remember the schedule, we'll get to it. I think it's going to be at 10:30 or 10:45, something like that. Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're interchangeable. You may find that it's possible to get help and even form study partnerships and things with with students from the other teacher's class, because it's going to be that similar. And if you know somebody really well and work really well, that may work for you. The second important thing to remember from this slide is the contact information. We have our phone numbers there with our extensions, and of course our emails. You can call these phone numbers. We are not guaranteed to be in the building present at our desks with our phones for this fall at least, but we can dial in from outside. We can remotely access our school voicemail, and we will be doing that. And you can reach us that way and leave messages. It may not be quite as prompt a response from us, and we have to remember to call into our voicemail, but we will get back to you. This is true for your parents as well. If they wish to speak to us, they can call these numbers in addition to emailing. Okay, any questions so far, Hillary?
No questions so far.
All right, good. So here's the schedule. This is a sample schedule. Obviously, I could not produce schedules for each and every one of you, but all of you have fourth period for U.S. history. So it's going to consistently be from 10:15 until 11:15 on Tuesdays and Fridays. And each class period will be followed by teacher's office hours for another half hour. Office hours are intended to clarify questions, to deal with people who may have missed previous classes, and so on and so forth. Although the technology is very helpful there, teachers are available right after each and every class to deal with any questions, concerns that students may have. Right from the get-go. It's also divided, as you can see, into synchronous and asynchronous sessions. You've probably heard that several times today or yesterday in your classes, and you'll hear it a whole lot more. The next couple of slides are going to explain that in more detail. But mornings will be live sessions with teachers, and afternoons will be time that is flexible, that you will structure. I do want to point out that to complete things and to do work and keep up on work, so forth, you will always have from Tuesday afternoon until Friday morning before you have another U.S. history class, and from Friday afternoon to the next Tuesday morning before you have another U.S. history class. So we're meeting just twice a week, whereas normally we'd meet either 2 times or 3 times. We're meeting twice a week for the 8 weeks following this week. I do have to make a request of y'all. As you can tell here from looking at the schedule, we have fewer classes being taught, just periods 1 through 4 in the first quarter, and then periods 5 through 8 in the second quarter. That means we have 2 days a week for 8 weeks with you. And because the afternoon or the later period classes come in second quarter, we have to teach you a semester's worth of material in 8 weeks. And that is a shorter time frame than we're used to. Please, please do not get behind on classwork. I feel like there's plenty of time between class sessions for you, but don't allow yourself to fall behind. The 9 weeks from this week and 8 weeks from the time we start with curriculum next week are going to fly by with all the things that we'll be learning and doing. And at the end of that quarter time, we have to come up with your semester grade, which is an official grade. You guys are juniors now, so you're kind of used to a quarter. Your grade at a quarter isn't really your permanent grade. Only under this schedule, it is. You will continue on in U.S. history during the second semester, but you who were taking it in the first quarter won't be taking it in the second quarter. You'll move on to your afternoon classes, your typically afternoon classes.
Mr. Miller, there's a question about what happens on Wednesday.
That is an excellent, excellent question. Thank you for asking, whoever that was. You all are enrolled in a community and connection class. You should have that on your schedules that you've seen, at least I believe that you've seen by now. But that will not necessarily be with Ms. Wilson or myself. Those are classes that are designed to do exactly what they say, to form a sense of community on a school-wide basis and to allow teachers and students to connect with one another outside of just, you know, these synchronous video sessions. So that's going to happen every Wednesday. The rest of Wednesday, various teachers are going to take various approaches. There will be office hours. There clearly will be office hours scheduled for Wednesday. They're not fixed and set for all the teachers the way these synchronous classes are, and the office hours that immediately follow them. So every teacher intends to have office hours on Wednesday. It's expected that you're doing on Wednesday pretty much the same thing that you are doing the other afternoons, asynchronous learning. But teachers will be available to you. Now, exactly what they will do during office hours and allow will vary from teacher to teacher. Many of the departments are working on things that they may want to do. And I have to be honest with you, we haven't completely finalized exactly what we'll do with those sessions. But there will be office hours. They'll vary some from teacher to teacher. And you will be able to email, voicemail, possibly even, you may even set up these video sessions on a one-to-one or a one teacher to 5 or 6 students who are struggling with something. On that kind of basis, you will be able to request these Google Meetings. So how do we do there? Give Ms. Pinkston a thumbs up or a thumbs down on how that shook out.
Are there any questions about the chat? Or I'm sorry, are there any questions about the schedule? Attendance will be taken for any synchronous class. So that includes community and connections. I think we're good to move on. If a question comes up, we'll ask it in a later slide.
Okay. Here's what to expect in synchronous sessions, in these live video sessions. We'll be reviewing content. We'll be having class discussions. We'll be practicing skills. We'll do breakout group work. And we will give instructions for the asynchronous learning. This will also be the time for assessments. So once we get started, class, the first time that you encounter the curriculum will probably be during the afternoons. You will probably get your first curriculum on Monday afternoon, or at least the first time that you really dig into the curriculum on Monday afternoon for your first period class, for example. And you'll go to work on that and get prepared for Thursday morning's class. And you'll get stuff Tuesday afternoon to prepare for Friday morning's class. It is important, it's going to be important that you do that work, that you get that work done before the next synchronous session. Because the next synchronous session will be assessments, quizzes and tests and so forth, practicing what you should have learned from reading from documents and books and so forth. Group work where you put your ideas about a historical issue or event or person or so on and so forth, where you put that information to work. If you haven't done the reading, or if you haven't done the research, or you haven't put time in during the asynchronous sessions, then you'll be unprepared to do that. And the synchronous sessions won't be of very much use to you, and that's going to lead to problems. So eventually it's going to be, we're going to give you some things to work and give you instructions on what to do with that work. You'll do that asynchronously. Then we will meet all together synchronously the next class period that's called for, and review, discuss, practice, and assess. And then start it over again. Give instructions for the next asynchronous learning, and then review, discuss, practice, assess.
No questions on this slide.
Okay.
Oh, one just popped up. How does attendance work?
Attendance will be taken at the end of each day, because we're tracking not only your attendance at the synchronous session, but we're tracking your attendance from asynchronous work. So we are going to be keeping track of whether you completed a form, did a practice writing, completed a writing sample, made a comment on a document. We will be keeping track of both the synchronous sessions and the asynchronous sessions, and then teachers will be recording attendance. How'd that do?
Good. And then another question, do we have to do community stuff on Wednesday? Again, attendance will be taken for that class.
Attendance will absolutely be taken for the community and connections class. However, as far as I know, there won't be any asynchronous work at all to do for the community and connection session. So I believe that the attendance for that class relies solely on your appearance at the synchronous video session. Does that jive with your understanding too, Hillary?
What was that, Brad?
Does that jive with your understanding about attendance as well?
Yes, it does.
Good. Okay, let's continue on. Here is asynchronous work. Asynchronous sessions are, somewhat like homework. This is acquisition of content. There'll be readings from materials. We will not have a textbook for this class, not a traditional textbook for this class. Instead, we have obtained the services of a digital content provider called Newsela. And when you first log in the first time to your Google Classroom account for US History class, you will also get an account with Newsela. And Newsela provides digital articles, books, or pamphlets, or whatever. It's not a traditional textbook, but it provides content, curriculum, documents that are primary, secondary, and tertiary, videos, so on and so forth. Newsela provides those kinds of things. And that's the primary way in which you will access with, maybe not the primary way, but one of the constant ways that you will be accessing materials. You'll do formative assignments here. We will assign you more or less traditional types of Google Classroom assignments. Writing assignments will attach movies and videos, and you'll go here and watch this, and you'll read that, and it'll look much like what you experienced last spring, except that's all you experienced last spring. But it will look quite similar to that. Maybe a little bit more expansive and more in-depth than it was last spring, but in its structure, quite a bit the same.
Mr.
And,
Miller, I'm going to stop you for just a moment and remind people that if you're just joining us, we're keeping the chat to questions about U.S. history. If you are not going to respect our online etiquette, then we are going to ask you to leave and come back and watch it once we've posted it to YouTube. Please keep the chat only to questions about U.S. history. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Pinkston. I want to support that 100%. We've already had classes, already had students, excuse me, not classes, but have students that are getting themselves into issues for that purpose. So I wanted to let my face be shown here and support that and just reaffirm the point. Okay, I see a question about what if we can't make it to class because of work. That's going to happen. We know that's going to happen. That's part of the grace, kindness, and patience. We're going to have to respect that. Your attendance, as I said, is going to look at both your presence in synchronous work sessions, synchronous live video sessions, and asynchronous work sessions. So it will be possible for you, let's say you have a work schedule that calls for you to be at work on Monday morning and you miss the first period class or you miss the third period class on Mondays. You may be able to get marked absent if you returned home in the afternoon and got online and you watched the video. As I said, all of these sessions will be recorded and they will be posted to Google Classroom for you. So if you came home from work in the afternoon and watched the morning's class session on video and then made some comments to your teacher and dug in and did some of the asynchronous work, and maybe you filled out a form, did a writing assignment, whatever was requested, you could still be marked present for that day. So we're trying to be flexible. We're trying to understand the situations that our students find themselves in. And we're not saying don't show up for these things, but we are saying that there's a little bit of room for grace and kindness and patience and understanding what people are going through. Hopefully that answered the question about that. Let me go back.
Absolutely. And the only other question I think you may talk about in the later slides, and if you don't, I'll make sure to ask it.
What's that one?
What topics will you be covering in U.S. history?
Yep, we're going to get there.
Perfect.
It's a slide away. Okay, last thing I want to say on these things here. You need to sort of flip the picture or flip the coin or whatever you want to call it on synchronous versus asynchronous. You're accustomed in high school to being in class for 90 minutes 2 or 3 times a week and then maybe having some homework left over after that. And I think you're going to need to flip the switch, as I said, in your mind to shorter classes that are only an hour long and only 2 days a week maximum. Less time in class, but more time that you will be responsible for doing work outside of class. And you'll need to discipline yourself to that and get accustomed to that. It's, as I said, it's 8 weeks starting next Monday, and then you have a counting grade. So getting behind is going to be real problematic. Stick with it, do your work outside of class, and all will be well. And here it is. This is the next slide. These are the units of studying. We're following in U.S. history classes something called the inquiry by design model of instruction, which some of you may have experienced already in either your language arts or possibly social studies classes, depending upon which classes you took and when. But that model frames a series of compelling questions in each of these 6 units over the course of the entire year. and then gives you a series of inquiries, actions that you'll be taking to investigate, research, and discover information about, for example, forming the United States borders. In that process, you will learn to answer these compelling questions. We might ask a compelling question such as, how did the United States come to have its present amount of territory? And what was the effect of that on the people who were living here prior to the United States acquiring that territory? Then we will design a series of inquiries for you to investigate and answer those questions, and we will assess you by asking you to answer those questions. We'll ask questions here in this first semester like, what is race exactly? And what is racial privilege? Why does it exist in the United States? And we'll give you opportunities to, again, read, research, investigate, discuss, practice, and then ultimately respond to that compelling questions. How and why does the United States intervene in other countries around the world? Will be a question that we might very well ask. And then again, we have a whole series of lessons and activities and so forth for you to answer those questions. And your assessments will be quite similar. They will be some version of asking you to answer that compelling question. I won't take time right now to go through the content in the second quarter. There's an old saying that goes, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, we might be in classrooms in second semester this year. Who knows? Let's hope COVID plays along for us and helps us out in that regard. So these are the subjects. And a more general description is that this class is the study of U.S. history using the inquiry design model of instruction to explore compelling questions. Major events, major issues, people, major social movements, advancements from the beginning of this United States right up to today, covering the entire history of the U.S. And we'll use a digital content provider instead of a textbook. Let me take a moment to stop there. Are there any questions about the content now, Hillary? Somebody's probably specifically asking about, are we going to learn about this or are we going to learn about that, right?
So far, there's no questions. Oh, one just was typed up. Do we need to take notes about what we study in online classes?
I'm going to get there on the next slide, but absolutely yes. The answer to that question is absolutely yes.
Perfect. I think we can move on, and I think the next question will be answered as well.
Okay. Suggestions for success. We've listed some of them for you. We've spent a lot of time, the whole district spent a lot of time gathering information from students, parents, families, teachers, etc., about the distance education experience that we had last spring. And we have learned a number of things, and the things that we have learned are reflected here on this slide. Have a dedicated workspace and communicate that with your family. This is where I am when I'm doing schoolwork, and when I'm here, if at all possible, when I'm here in this spot, I'm only doing schoolwork. Be present. I think I'm going to send you guys a copy of my poster that says, if I see it, I take it. How'd you feel about that? Don't answer that question. But put away your cell phones. I've said this 1,000 times before. There's nothing inherently evil about cell phones. They're just not compatible with learning hardly at all. Put them aside, put them away. You're going to have plenty of access to technology here, but put away your personal cell phone and personal gear and things like that for a dedicated period of time and out of a dedicated space. And we've highlighted in green, have a notebook or a system for taking and organizing notes. Those of you, there's a few of you who've been in my classes before, and you know that I've told you to have a spiral notebook or composition notebook for the class in which to take notes. And I strongly encourage you to do that, even though you're not going to be here in class with me. These hour-long synchronous sessions, you'll be surprised how much shorter 60 minutes is than 87 minutes. It'll seem like more than 27 minutes. I knew that was coming. Somebody was going to say, no, I won't be surprised. It's 27 minutes. But you'll be surprised at how much shorter it feels. So yes, you will certainly need to be taking notes on a consistent basis.
Go ahead.
I was about to say, maybe this will answer somebody's question. We've been filling out a form about resources that students need. In my classes, at least, and I can't speak to this for sure for Ms. Wilson. I can't talk for her. But in my classes, I have still bought a whole bunch of these spiral notebooks. And I would be happy. We're going to be distributing resources next week. I'm not sure what the schedule is in terms of specifics, times for specific classes and so forth. I believe it might be something like freshmen first and then sophomores and then juniors and then seniors. But we're going to be distributing textbooks and spiral notebooks. We can distribute spiral notebooks. If you were to email me or leave me a comment on Google Classroom in the stream that you would like a spiral notebook, I have a couple of boxes. I don't have unlimited quantities, but I'll do the best I can to stick one in the bag that people are going to be putting together bags for students with textbooks and maybe these notebooks and other kinds of supplies, that maybe a calculator from math class or something for students who need them, and then students will be able to drive into the school and pick up the bag full of supplies. So let me know, and I'll pass out any and all of those that I have that are needed.
There's a question about if there's any other materials that they will need for class.
The typical materials will be needed for class. You will need paper and pens and pencils and highlighters. Yes. You will need those kinds of things. We're going to be doing more of those things digitally than before. But certainly, you will still need papers and pencils. And I encourage you to have a binder. It's not required for this class, but I encourage you to have a binder in which you can separate all of the material, all of the notes, and anything that you decide to print off to keep a hard copy, to keep those organized. So any kind of organizing system is always good, but there is no supplemental reading material, for example. We're not going to be using any printed textbook, so whatever I ask you to read, I will assign to you digitally. So I think that's about it, really.
Okay. We only have about 5 minutes left, so I'll let you finish your PowerPoint,
Yep.
and then if there's any last questions, we will answer those.
Well, this is the last slide here. As a matter of fact, I just want to say again, I want to say that it's going to be challenging for all of us. There are going to be times when I'm going to just flat out apologize to you for something getting screwed up. Many of these digital tools are entirely new to me. I learned about them and heard about them for the first time last week in many cases, even 2 days ago in one or two cases. So I won't be perfect the very first time around, and I won't be expecting you to be. I think I failed to say that we will be accepting assignments at any time during this quarter. There will really be no such thing as late work, or you'll be knocked down one grade or 25% or 50%. There will be none of that in this quarter in distance education. So you may turn things in according to your own schedule. I will grade them, and however they grade out is the grade you'll get on those, whether they're turned in the first week or the 8th week. However, I want to remind you again, that's my commitment, and it's our commitment to be kind and graceful and patient with you. But please don't get behind. Please don't allow yourself to slack off and struggling to get behind. 8 weeks is going to go by very, very quickly.
Absolutely. So there was a couple.
That is it.
Okay, there's a couple questions. Will the sessions be lecture type sessions or group work? And will you have debates similar to what you did last year in government class?
Yes, absolutely. I hope not to lecture much. We don't have a lot of time in an hour's session. So yes, we will have debates. We will have breakout groups, something we call breakout rooms, that are smaller groups within the class, a class of 5 or 6 students. And if you've done your asynchronous work, you'll get together and discuss and debate and compare and contrast. And many of the things that I've done in my classes before, just here in the classroom or in the classroom and in the office, and we'll do them digitally instead. I'm in the process of setting up those breakout groups. The only limitation that we have digitally is you'll be in the same breakout group for the full quarter, because we just don't have quite as much flexibility. So yes, we will be doing all the same regular kinds of activities: group work, practice sessions, simulations, etc. I see a couple questions about grades. You're getting letter grades this year. You are getting letter grades. It's not pass-fail any longer.
And how will tests and exams work?
In Ms. Wilson's class and as I said, all of your summative assessments that sum up the units will be a written response to the compelling question. And we will be giving you instructions on how to write those, and we'll be giving you writing instruction and reading instruction the way we always do. We'll be giving you, I'm drawing rubrics. I was drawing a total blank on that word. We'll be giving you rubrics about what's a successful response, and so on and so forth. And those will be the summative assessments. We've made a decision that summative assessments are going to count for 70% of your semester grade, and the formative assessments that you will do from day to next day, to the next class day, to the next class day, will be worth 30%. How'd that work for you? Okay?
Okay, so we're close to our time. So if there's any last questions out there, please type them in the chat.
At this point, I would actually like to open it up one time to just real quickly for you to open your mic and ask me anything you want to ask me about. Please, when you've asked your question, please turn your mic back off. so we don't hear your dog barking or the lawnmower going or anything like that. But is there anybody out there who wants to just open up their mic and say hi or ask a question? Come on, Ellie, I was counting on you.
I have a question, Miller.
Okay, see, you
is
don't have
Sophia.
faces, so who is it?
This is Sophia talking.
Okay,
Will there be extra credit assignment opportunities?
no,
No? Okay.
no. It would just be impossible to figure out where they would come from and so on and so forth. There are a few limitations to distance learning.
Okay, thank you.
So,
If you don't, let me just say one thing. At this point, if you don't have any questions, you can log off because we are over our time. But if you still have questions, then feel free to stay on here and ask.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah,
All
bye.
we're leaving.
So, how are these tests going to look like? Like, how are they going to look like?
Well, I think I've explained it as much as I can today. It's going to be a writing assignment that you'll write a response to a question. But please let me assure you, David, that we'll give you lots more detail about it as we go through the class.
All right, cool. Nice seeing you
What
back.
did you want to say?
That's just nice seeing you back, man.
Nice to see you too. Ellie, open up your mic there. I knew you wanted to say something.
Does it work?
Yeah,
Oh, hi.
there you are. What did you want to ask me?
It's about basketball. It's not about.
Okay, well, I'll stick around for a few minutes after the
Okay.
longer than the session here, so just hang around and we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Anyone else? Jesus. Oh, I guess I was wrong. Jesus looked like he wanted to ask a question. Okay. I think we're done.
All right, we will see
Well,
everyone.
See you all next week.
Yep, next.
Ellie, go right ahead. Ask away.
We'll see everyone next week. And then Ellie, if you have a question, feel free to ask it.
Okay. No, I was just gonna ask if you knew anything about it, like when it is, or if workouts are starting or anything.
I know this much. OSAA has postponed all sporting activities for the remainder of this calendar year.
Oh. Okay.
And then they've set up a schedule for 2021, which would start with winter sports. And the sports have all been condensed to a conference-only season. So instead of playing 20-some games out of our including out of our conference and in tournaments and such,
Yeah.
we'd play only 14 games. We play the other 7 teams in our conference twice.
Oh, okay.
So it's 8 weeks. 8 weeks for fall sports, or excuse me, winter. It starts with winter sports. 8 weeks with winter sports. Then they move fall sports to after winter sports, and they've got 8 weeks. And then spring sports have the final 8 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But all of that, I have to give you the caveat. And the caveat is that all of that is still dependent upon the virus. And
Yeah.
we cannot do that if the state's rules at the time prohibit it. And then
Okay.
as far as workouts go, that's up to your coaches in the individual sports.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.